Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Amanda Shores, and we will be presenting for you the second part in our Belmont Applicable series, the technical submission, where we will go over the finer details of building a research consortium that's eligible for our funding. And we will go through our online submission portal so that you know all of the details that are vital to ensuring that you are eligible. If you missed our first session, which was Monday, our alumni highlight panel, you can find that on the Belmont Forum YouTube. You can find the link down here. It was a really excellent session, so you should be sure to join that with us. If you were at that session, you might have heard that one of our alumni panelists, a brand new one, his name is Peter Wangai, he actually attended a session very similar to this, and then built his research team right after and applied for our funding and was successful. So it sort of goes to show you the power of holding these informational sessions. And so we are so glad that you're here with us today. We hope that you will join us in applying for our funding and utilizing us in any way that you can. So I would like to send this over now to Erica Key, who is our Executive Director for the Belmont Forum. She will be giving us more information on kind of the background and history of the Belmont Forum. Take it away, Erica.
Thanks so much, Amanda. I'm glad to see many of you here today, and I'm recognizing a lot of names from our earlier session this week. Just going to give you a bit of history about Belmont Forum. I'm the Executive Director of the Secretariat, and part of what Belmont Forum does is it brings together funds and in-kind contributions to support international transdisciplinary activity. How do we decide what kind of themes those transdisciplinary and international activities are going to be? That is a process that starts with our members and with Future Earth. They prepare thematic proposals that are then put in front of our members at our annual plenary meeting. And we discuss those there. And if we have at least 3 countries that are willing to support that theme, it gets moved into something called scoping. And then we work with funders all over the world and with experts like yourselves to refine and define what that call will look like. And so sometimes we'll have networking calls, sometimes we'll have research, synthesis, or specific activity maybe around health or e-infrastructure. So this is where they come from so that you can apply to them. And this graphic shows you our universe, our members, which are led by co-chairs in a steering committee, the Secretariat, which Amanda and Megan and myself are within, and creating groups of program coordinators representing resources and funding from around the world, led by a thematic program office to deliver a funding call that you can then apply to. And these little puzzle pieces at the bottom this is your teams coming together, natural sciences, social sciences and humanities with stakeholders, and with other sciences like engineering, health, mathematics, law, whatever is required to address that theme. But our minimum is natural sciences, social sciences and humanities, and a stakeholder of your choosing. Next slide, please. Okay, I have an updated map for this. Maybe I can, well, I was going to present my screen on this. This is quite a dated map of Belmont Forum. We've grown a lot since these days. So we actually have partners now, over 100 partners, 30 members, and we have connectivity pretty much all over the globe now. We work not only with public sector funding agencies, but we work with aid and development organizations, with the Future Earth Pegasus funds, with medical research institutes. So our canvas of potential funding on a call is quite broad. our members are not required to participate in every call. What we do is find a coalition of the willing, because not every theme speaks to every country's priorities and interests. So that's why we work outside of the member circle with partners from all over the world to create this group of program coordinators. We additionally have partners that connect us into UN frameworks, into science councils and federal agency collaboratives, as well as large modeling centers. So we're really trying to expand our reach, be as inclusive as possible so that as many countries can come together around these themes as possible. If you wonder if there is a funding partner in your part of the world, please feel free to write us. We'd like to learn more about the funding landscape where you come from so that maybe we can engage with those partners to join us in a collaborative research action. Next slide, please. And so since our inception, we actually were founded in 2009, put our first calls in 2012, and our most recently awarded calls are Soils and Pathways. Those are just getting kicked off at the SRI Congress in a few weeks. And we're working on new themes right now to be able to put calls out later this year and next year. And you may have seen some of our social media about scoping activities around those calls as we define the themes and judge where the community is in terms of delivering on some of these themes. Do we need to put more funding into capacity development to bring everyone up into networks that can apply for full research funding? Where is the temperature on some of these very complex system-oriented themes? So we are going to use these most recent calls as a framing for this technical session to show you how to apply to those calls that are going to be coming out later this year. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, we are supporting international approaches, transdisciplinary approaches to these global environmental change themes. And we're looking not just at understanding, but also mitigating and adapting. So it's moving knowledge into an action space. It's able to transform policy and practice through that weaving together of knowledge and action with stakeholders. So if you look at the call requirements, it's a minimum of 3 countries involved, and those 3 countries have to be eligible for support from 3 of the funders in the call. So it's a bit of a puzzle game, like you saw in the first slide, looking at the annexes, reading the call text, knowing which organizations are supporting that theme, and then, networking to be able to create a core that is eligible to, for resources from 3 of those organizations. The transdisciplinary aspect we mentioned, natural sciences, which includes physical sciences like climate science, social science, inclusive of humanities, and stakeholders. And you get to define the stakeholder because it's very contextual. It's very specific to what you're proposing. And they should come together in a co-design and co-implementation process. We don't want to look at, or we are not going to fund activity that is driven predominantly by one science with other sciences sort of tacked on as an afterthought, where stakeholders are not part of the activity. They are just viewed as recipients of academic knowledge. We're looking at how to optimize all of the components of the proposal to have added value and bring more than we could do alone within a single discipline or within just academia. So if you are not listed or not covered by a funder that is in the call text for that theme, you can still participate. It just means that you would be coming as a self-funded participant. But I would be very careful reviewing the annexes and getting in touch with those program contacts, because there are opportunities sometimes for a national funder to fund beyond their national boundaries. So it can never hurt to ask and make sure that you are eligible for resources. Okay, next slide. And then this is my last slide before I turn back to Amanda. This is looking at the timeline. How do we roll these out? So, you know, we post all of our calls on the Belmont Forum grant operations page, as well as on the Belmont Forum main website. So belmontforum.org or bfgo.org are our primary sites. And we will post it there, and we'll put it out on social media. We have a Twitter account, we have a LinkedIn page. We also have a newsletter on our Connect page that you can sign up for. So it's launched, you look through all of the documents, you prepare a proposal, and you submit it to BFGO. And depending on the call requirements, there might be a registration phase, which is kind of like a letter of intent or a pre-proposal. If you're using other terminology, we call it a registration. So make sure you know whether there is a registration phase or not and what those requirements are, or it might just be that they ask for the full proposal. Once that comes in, it will be subject to review. The review criteria are focused on that transdisciplinarity, on the open data and open access, which is required by Belmont Forum. And a panel of experts will look at all compliant proposals that have met all of the eligibility checks and make recommendations to the funders. The funders are present for that panel of experts, and then they work to synchronize funding around the most meritorious activity in that cohort. And at that process, at the end of that process, it's communicated by the thematic program office that is administering the call on behalf of Belmont Forum, whether you've been awarded or declined. And if you've been awarded, each one of the funders that are supporting your activity will be in touch with you to make awards directly to you. So it's not a common pot, it's a virtual pot. And we synchronize all of these funders all over the world to be able to make their award monies available or their in-kind resources at the same time. So I think I've covered most of this milestone here, but I'd like to pass it back to Amanda to take us through the next steps.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Erica. So now I am bringing you to some of the ways to connect with the Belmont Forum. So here you're looking at a screenshot of the Belmont Forum website. That's belmontforum.org, so you can't forget. And on the top right-hand bar, you will see this Connect tab. If you go to the first option below Connect, it says Connect with the Forum. So you're going to want to click there, and it will take you to this page where you can add us on all of your social media, on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, as well as on YouTube. YouTube is a really wonderful resource for you because we've had training videos like this that we've posted there in the past. You can find out all of the information about, you know, once you become a Belmont Forum participant, the different requirements that you would have. You can connect with different projects that way to see who is kind of in our ecosystem. And so those can be really useful to you. I recommend to going and adding us on all of our social media accounts. Also, a really important resource is our newsletter. So we have a quarterly newsletter that comes out. We promise we won't spam you with lots of information or anything like that. It's just a one-shot 4 times a year with interesting upcoming events, upcoming funding calls, upcoming opportunities, or presentations from our different project participants that we would like to share. So I really recommend you to go to this Connect part of our website and to join our mailing list so you can receive the most up-to-date and current information about the Belmont Forum. So now if we're going back to the Belmont Forum website, the next arguably most important part is this CRA/opportunities tab. So CRA stands for Collaborative Research Action. That's the term that we used for our various calls on different topics. So as Erica had showed you before, we had highlighted our 2 most recent calls. So you would click on this tab and scroll down. This would be the next thing you would see on that page. And so you have calls for each of our collaborative research actions or research calls over the years. And so you can see those all here. And we just recently launched the Soils and Pathways research calls, or research projects actually. And so this is what you would click on to find out information about a past call, or to get all of the information that you would need to apply for an ongoing or current call. So for example, if you clicked on Pathways, which is now closed, by the way, but when it was open, you could click on Pathways and it would show you these 4 different tabs. So once the projects launch and we have information about the projects, that would go in here. Any data that they created would be in this tab, and to connect with that project, there would be this tab here. But the main tab you want to look for is this resource tab, and that takes you to all of the information that you need to apply for that funding call. So when you scroll down a little bit more on the CRA tab, the next thing that you'd see, remember we were in the Pathways tab there, so you would see all of the call documents. So this would be the call for proposals. So that would tell you the overall eligibility requirements that a project team needs to meet in order to be eligible for our funding. You would also see a proposal form and proposal form instructions, with Judith is so generously going to go through in a little bit, so that you know how to translate your proposal into our online submission system. So this is maybe the most important slide that I want to show you here. This is the funding annexes for the Pathways call as an example. So you can see here that we had 16 funding agencies come together to fund researchers from different countries to come together on a project on a particular topic. And so you can see the country here, but like Erica was saying, many of these funders are able to fund researchers and stakeholders from outside of their country. You wouldn't know that though looking at this table. So you need to click on each one of these annexes in order to find out the details on who can be funded according to that funding agency's annex. So I really encourage you to thoroughly go through every single annex with your entire team so that everyone is fully aware of all of the requirements that are within them. So now I want to show you one example of how you can bring together a project team that is eligible for Belmont Forum funding. There's sort of 2 tiers of eligibility. There's the overall project eligibility, and that is defined in the call text. Erica went over that a little bit before, but in general, overall, you have to have 3 project participants that are from 3 different countries requesting from 3 different funding agencies' annexes. It needs to be a transdisciplinary team, including stakeholders, and the teams need to be utilizing co-production and co-implementation with stakeholders and your project team. So that's the general call text requirements, but you would need to look in the call text in order to see those specificities. So now let's look at how we build the individual components of a project team that meet our eligibility. So generally you would start off with choosing a consortium lead. That's the term we use just for the project team lead. And so let's say you have a team lead and that person is from country A and they want to apply for the Pathways to Sustainability research call. So they look to see if any of the annexes cover country A, and there is one. So they look to that one further and they find that they meet all of the eligibility requirements. So they are able to request funding from according to Annex A. So that gives us the first person in our consortium. Next, we have team member 2, and let's say this person is from country B. They look through the annexes and they see that there is an annex from a funding agency to support country B, but they are not providing funding resources. They are providing in-kind services. And so let's say that team member 2 is okay with this. Maybe they have their own funds to bring to the team as well, and they can accept the in-kind support. And they are eligible according to Annex B. So they can join this team as well. And that would count as another member towards meeting our minimum of 3 project participants from 3 countries. Now let's say we have a team member number 3 that we want to join the project team, and they're from country C. They look through the annexes and they find that a funding agency is supporting country C. They look through the annex and see that they meet all of the eligibility requirements in that annex. So now this person can join our team as well. And at this point, we have actually met the minimum requirements of building a research project team that's eligible for Belmont Forum funding. But let's say you don't want to go there, stop there, that you want to continue to build your team, which we definitely encourage because we want you to have a broad expertise in your research team. So let's say that now we add team member 4 to our team, and they're from country D. You look through the annexes and you see there is actually no annex from a funding agency to support a team member from country D. Well, it's okay if this person is able to be a self-funded participant of this research team, then they are still able to join, and in our documents, they would just include themselves as being self-funded, but they can still participate in this activity. And now lastly, let's say that we have team member 5 who would also like to join this team, and they look through the annexes. They see there is an annex for the country that they're from, but looking through the specifications in that annex, they determine that they actually are not eligible for funding according to that annex. That's okay if they still want to participate on this project team. They are still welcome to join as a self-funded member as well. So you can see that overall we have 5 project participants here, and we have the 3 that are requesting from 3 different funding agencies according to their annex. So this project team would be eligible for our funding if it met the transdisciplinary and co-produced aspects as well. So now I want to talk to you a little bit about the different things that you should be looking for in the overall call text that your entire project needs to meet in order to be eligible, as well as the things that you would want to look for in each individual annex to make sure you are following the guidelines. So when we're looking at our call text, you would first want to find out the types of projects that are fundable. So for example, the Pathways project that we just launched is funding networking proposals, whereas typically we support your typical research proposals. So you want to make sure you're understanding that difference there. You also want to look at the duration of the project in the call text. So typically we have projects that last for 3 years, but for example, in that Pathways networking call, that's 1 or 2 year projects. So it can vary. You would want to look at the context for the call. For example, the Pathways call had a very open context. You could, the project participants are really in control of determining the context. Some research calls may not be that way. They may be much more specific. So you want to know that. You want to know the topics to be addressed. So for coming back to our Pathways example, they gave 2 different topics that needed to be addressed that would make you eligible for that funding. It would also describe the number of researchers needed on a proposal. Typically, it's 3, a minimum of 3 from 3 countries requesting from 3 different funding agencies annexes, but it can vary. You would want to look here to see what types of participants are supposed to be included. This can be, as Erica was mentioning, mathematicians, lawyers, economists, stakeholders. So these sorts of things would be specified in the call text. You would want to look to see if there's any approach that's outlined in the call text that you would need to utilize in your proposal. And what deliverables are being asked for, if any. Are those research papers? Are those blogs? Are those maps? Are those engagement activities? And then any other details that are specified in the call text, those will all be there very clear. And so if you have any questions on the call text overall, that's something that you can reach out to the Belmont Forum for. Now I'm going to jump to looking at the different specifications that you need to look for in each individual funding agency's annex. So this is arguably one of the most important parts and maybe one of the more challenging aspects of being eligible for our funding. Say you have 10 team members on your project and they are all requesting from 10 different annexes. Therefore, you have to make sure you're meeting 10 different eligibility requirements. So what you want to look for in each of those annexes is which country is supported. As we mentioned earlier in the table that shows all of the different annexes, it mentions the country, but they may be able to support well beyond their country borders if you look in the annex. So you definitely want to look for those to see if your country can be supported by that funding agency. You would want to look for the type of participant that is eligible according to each annex. So typically researchers are eligible for funding, but sometimes stakeholders can be deemed eligible as well, and other types of participants. So you would want to be very clear as to who is eligible according to that annex. You would want to look, this is very important, you would want to look in the annex to see if they are designating funding or in-kind contributions. And if there's in-kind contributions, is that researcher or stakeholder able to participate with only receiving in-kind contributions and not funding? You would want to look if funding is being provided, is there a maximum funding request that is designated by the funding agency? And this is important as well. So say, let's go back to our example of having 10 project participants on a project team. We're requesting, let's say that 2 of them are requesting from the same funding agency's annex. Well, if there's a maximum funding request that has to be made, can that be divided amongst the 2 individuals who are requesting from that funding agency? So you would want to make sure you understand those aspects. You would want to look for the duration for each annex. You know, as we said, that could be 1, 2, or 3 years. You would want to look to where to submit the proposal. So typically the proposals are always submitted in what we call BFGO, which is our grant management system or online submission portal, if you will. But there are certain cases where some of the funding agencies want you to submit the proposal to their grant management system as well. So you would want to make sure in each annex that you're knowing if you need to submit to an additional grant management system. And then you would want to know if there are any stipulations on the number of researchers in a consortium. So typically in our overall call text requirements, we have a minimum of 3 participating researchers and stakeholders requesting from 3 different annexes. But they could be more, or yeah, it could typically be more sometimes, depending on the annex that you are applying against. So I'll just give a quick example here, the Pathways to Sustainability research call. One of our funders in their annex said that your overall project needed to have 10 to 20 researchers involved, half of which came from the country from that annex. So, you know, can your project team meet that eligibility requirement? And if not, maybe they do not want to request to that annex. And the last thing that you want to know is the currency for the maximum funding request. So that can be in euros, it could be in US dollars, it can vary there in the funding in the annex. But when you are submitting your proposal, it will all be in euros. And with that, I will ask Judith to jump in with us. Oh, I hear maybe, okay, please make sure you're on mute so we can keep our meeting running smoothly. Judith, can I have you jump in here so that we can now go over creating and submitting a proposal?
Yes, thank you, Amanda, for that really detailed description of what goes into the call text, what are the important elements to look for, and where to look for that information in the annexes as well. So while you're pulling up these slides and going to the web pages, just want to go back for a second without you having to click to a place that where you would find the most important documents that we are looking at right now. They are all on belmontforum.org on the CRA page, linked to the specific collaborative research section that you are applying for. So you will find the call text there, you will find the annexes there, and you will also find the proposal form and the instructions related to the proposal form. These are templates. So the documents that you're finding there and you can download them when you click on proposal form and proposal instruction forms. Those are usually Word documents that are serving and guiding you through the process before you have to enter all of the information into BFGO, into the Belmont Forum Grant Operations System. So that's exactly, thank you, Amanda, for going to the place that I'm talking about. So you can see the call text there, proposal form and proposal instructions are going to be Word documents that you download to your computer. You can explore them on your own time, offline, learn about the details that you're going to have to enter into the grant operations system. And you're also going to be able to share those templates with your consortium team members. So you can co-design that application process, again, online. And when you are ready with that, you can go and log in into the grant operations system, and the consortium lead alone can take the information from the entire project team and paste it into the online submission system, ready to be submitted and reviewed. So let's go back to those templates again and take a look at the details. So the first document we are looking at is the instructions for proposals. It's really important to download both the proposal form as well as the instructions for the proposals. They go in parallel, hand in hand with each other. You're going to find the guidance in the instructions for proposals that will help you put in the details into the proposal form itself. So you have to come up with a project title that is the first instruction point right there. And there is a little instruction, indicate the title of your project. That one is a relatively simple task. But the next, you will see, you also have to come up with an acronym. And these acronyms, you can explore them. They get really, really creative. Belmont Forum tends to refer to all of the projects using these acronyms because they are easier to remember. So you probably want to brainstorm with your team members to choose a short, snappy little acronym for your proposal that is representative of the title itself. Topics, that was one of the important elements that Amanda mentioned, that you have to make sure that you pick a topic from the call text, reading through the proposal instructions, and pick a topic that is relevant to what you want to propose. So to be eligible, your project does have to address one or sometimes more than one of the topics that are specified in the call text. So these elements you're going to be finding in the instruction as well. So I don't want to go into too many details describing the instruction forms. It's there to guide you. Let's go to the actual application form itself. So this template, this Word document, actually includes all of the details that are in the online submission system. They are going to look familiar, and these templates are supposed to help you. So the application system, when you go and log in there and start putting in the information, you already have it offline, prepared, ready to go. So again, you will put in project title, acronyms, pick your topics with simple check boxes, pick a project duration. So how do you decide how long your project is? Amanda told you that's really important to look for that in the call text. Sometimes the funding agencies have to define how long your project can last, how long you're eligible. Generally, it can vary between 1 to 2 years for something like Pathways, that is a networking grant, but it can be as long as 4 to 5 years for larger projects that are supposed to be longer term. So make sure that you know what is the duration of the project that you can, how long can your project be, and put that into the application form. The project summary is going to be something simple, relatively short. The character limit is included there. You do have to count the characters yourself, but it's a Word document, so you can probably do that using the tools that are in the word processing system. You have to pick keywords. We may scroll further down. Let's look at the other elements that are more important. Let's stop here for a second and go a little bit back up with the personnel. So the summary of the participating organizations as well as the participating organizations themselves. So if you go to point 10.1, let's take a look at that together. Participating organizations. You do have to put in the name and maybe the organization as an acronym as well, and then select from a menu and define the organization type. You will have to do this for every single organization that is participating in your project team. So you might see in the template only one box that says participating organizations. You want to copy and paste and create more of these so you do collect the information on all of the organizations for all of the team members if they are coming from different places. So pick the organization type. We do have a number of lists. Academic organizations, foundations, government, NGOs, international versus national NGOs, public sector, private sector. So lots of different choices to pick from. You also have to define your role. So that's really important. That is part of the process that really defines whether you are going to be eligible based on those requirements that Amanda emphasized. So is this organization going to be one that is seeking actual funding? So you have to have an annex that backs that specific organization. And your award seeking, you do have an annex where you can receive monetary funding. Or is this an organization that's going to be an in-kind partner? So there is an annex, but they are going to not receive monetary funding. Instead, they are going to receive in-kind support from one of the funding agencies. So they will be backed by an annex. Or is this an organization where the person participating in the project is fully self-financed? So they do not receive funds or in-kind support from any of the CRA funding agencies. It also can be a contractor or subawardee, or you can be a stakeholder. So some of the funding organizations allow for stakeholders to be award seeking as well if they can receive funding from a specific organization. But it might be possible that the stakeholder is participating in the project without having an annex backing them. So that's what organization role stands for. Then you would put in details about the organization itself, its address, its headquarters, websites. A lot of the information is mandatory. Not everything is mandatory. So you will see the little red star in the online submission system when something is mandatory. Make sure that you focus on those things that you do have to put in there. Let's scroll down a little bit, Amanda. Thank you. So again, here's another copy here of the organizations, and you can see you can add more boxes. You can just copy them and paste more boxes to include all of the information that you're going to need to be able to apply in the grant operation system. All right, let's go a little bit down. So the summary forms, they are going to be created as you fill in the boxes in the online submission system. Now the information about the personnel themselves. Who is going to be the consortium lead, who is a team member that is responsible for the administrative role, making sure that the application is submitted, that reporting is submitted if you get an award. The consortium lead is really a team member with a special admin role. You do have to pick for that person that is their role in the consortium. So you can see the first checkbox right there, one consortium lead per proposal. So click that check mark if you're a consortium lead. And then everyone else who are going to have different roles in your consortium. They become partner PIs if they receive funding, in-kind collaborators if they are a PI who doesn't receive monetary funding, but they are in-kind supported by one of the funding agencies, or a fully self-financed collaborator who might be a PI, might be a researcher, or also might be a stakeholder or other partner as well. Then you do have to provide these roles for every team members. So really important to define them. Again, you can do the same thing as before. You can copy and paste different boxes to make sure that every team member's roles are defined and all of their contact information is included. All right. Now, Currency, we have brought that up multiple times. When you're putting together your funding plan and your budget, you're looking at these annexes, you already know how much money can you ask for from each specific agency. In your funding plan, you have to provide more detail. We highlighted that part about the currency. In this funding plan, you have to put your budget in thousands of euros. So it says K euro. So you have to make some calculations and make sure that if your proposal said you can ask for up to 50,000 US dollars, okay, what does that mean in euros? So that's probably about 42,000 euros at the time of conversion. And what is that in thousands of euros? So that's 42K euros. The numbers that are going to go into the totals in this funding plan are going to be small numbers like 3, 5, 7, adding up to approximately 42K euros. Let's go back down. So currency is important. Make sure you do those conversions. All right. And last but not least, the data management plan. So both Erica and Amanda mentioned it before that it's really important in Belmont Forum projects that you look at the principles related to open science and prepare a data and digital objects management plan. That is part of the proposal. So there are really specific questions there. The whole plan itself is really just an opportunity for you to think about your project well in advance and think what is going to happen to the expected outputs, to who's going to be in charge of keeping track of the data. How are you going to be sharing that? How are you going to be ensuring that data and privacy are respected? And for example, if you're collecting personal information, how are you going to protect that and keeping it secure? So these questions specifically are an opportunity for you to make a plan, and you're going to be able to update it if you're awarded and make sure that your full project lifecycle is represented in this entire process. So let's go to BFGO and see what it looks like when you go to the grant operations system. All right, so this is what the portal looks like. And if you click on bfgo.org, hopefully it seems familiar. Make sure you read the information. BFGO, the whole system is GDPR compliant. So we want to make sure that you know that when you're putting in personal information related to your projects, your privacy is protected. So you do have to create a login. You will also see if there are any opportunities. So if you take a look at the home and the left navigation bar, you can see any possible polls that are open at the time. These will take you back to belmontforum.org, so we will not click on them. But you will see the information related. So Amanda already has a login. So let's click on login. You can always also click on info@belmontforum.org or info@bfgo.org and ask for help with your login. And you will see applications, home and applications at this application stage. So Amanda clicked on applications. You can see that she has started an application for pathways, which is what we have been talking about. So let's take a look at that. What's happening inside? What does the application form look like in the submission system? Hopefully it's familiar. Again, the first thing we see is a project title. So you could copy it from that Word document that we looked at before, put in your project title, put in your acronym. We talked about it. You have to pick a topic. The topics are here. Again, they were in the instruction form. They were in the Word document. You just check off one or both of the topics that you're working on. The project duration, okay, we decided that this is going to be 18 months project. So you put in what year are you starting, what months, and that will create the calculation for the duration of your project. You can see the little stars that I mentioned before. These are mandatory fields. So if you try to submit a proposal without filling in these elements, it's not going to go through. You are required to fill in these elements. You can copy and paste in your project summary, the keywords. All of these elements are parts that are in the template as well. So we're done with one page. Let's go to that left navigation bar and see, okay, organizations, we talked about this in detail in the template. Okay, so you have to edit again, click on edit, and we will see what does it look like, that little table that we talked about. And there. So Amanda is demonstrating, you can type in there, you can copy and paste, you put in your organization's name, acronym, what type of organization is that? Is a drop-down menu. So you have to pick one, whether it's award seeking, whether it's in kind, what kind of organization role do we have for that? And you can see that some of the address elements are mandatory. They have to start. Sometimes it is not mandatory because, for example, not every country in the world uses postal codes or zip codes. So we cannot make that mandatory. We don't want you to make up a zip code if your country doesn't use that. You can include, of course, online information from the website or social media. You might not know that, so it's not mandatory to do that. Let's go to personnel, which was the other type. Oh, one thing before we move is adding new organizations. So each organization that is seeking funding has to have their own little table. So make sure you know how to click on that add new, and you will use the information, exact same information as before from the template, copy and paste it here, and make sure every organization is represented. Now we can move on to personnel. It will be familiar. So you can edit that first person. Maybe if you click on edit right now, or that partner PI, again, we have seen this information. You put in the name, the title, contact information, and then the role in the consortium, and the role in the project that you can describe. What is the funding source? So you want to make sure if this person is applying as a Belmont Forum team member, pick that annex that they are going to be using to support them. So this person is applying through the Group on Earth Observation, GEO, as an example right here. And if we have an organization, primary organization, in that drop-down menu, we are going to be able to pick it. Let's see, there is none in here, but that's where it would show up. And some details, personal details about the person. So you do pick the research area. We have lots and lots of sources and ways to pick that. And some information to support that person's background. And let's click on the funding plan, the budget. Again, currency is right there, really important to make sure you use K euros, thousands of euros, and edit a funding plan. So for each applicant's budget, you do have to put in details related to what they are asking. What are they asking? Money for salaries? Are they asking for travel, consumables? Does their institution charge overhead? Make sure you put in this in euros, converted from the original currency where you might have calculated it, and in thousands of euros specifically. And this budget has to represent each project year. So if these are 2-year projects, then you're going to be creating a budget for each year in different columns. All right, and last.
Save too at the bottom of after you submit each one of your
very good point
information.
Yes, make sure you hit save. And last but not least, the data management plan. So talked about that. The same questions are going to show here. So you can really design and co-design a data management plan with your team members in that template format. And then you just copy and paste the information in here. You can see all of these questions are mandatory. It's really important for Belmont Forum that you are thinking about this from the very beginning, even from the proposal stage of your project preparation. So let's click on proposal elements just to see what it shows. So this basically has a number of different files that you might be able to show. One of the important things that we do see here that's not mandatory is that you can actually choose the annexes that you might have downloaded from online and upload them here and say, these are the annexes that are relevant to my proposal, and put them in there.
Some annexes, hi, this is John. Some annexes require special responses, and so that's what that field captures. So if your annex requires something special, then that's where you would submit that.
Exactly. And then sometimes it is possible to submit supporting letters. So that is where you would be uploading that as well. So if additional documents are needed, that's where you would find those. And now let's click on submit. And see that I've talked for a long time. So because Amanda didn't fill in all of the details, this shows the status being incomplete. And this status check is actually really a good opportunity to review if everything that you needed to submit a proposal is in place, if there is anything missing. Hopefully when you get to that submission stage, there is very little in this portion, and you don't see a lot of it. All right, Johnny, is there anything that I missed? Could you add? So Johnny here, he's the master of the back end. He knows really well what happens in BFGO. So I'm going to give the floor to him.
You didn't miss much. Two things. Once you submit everything, that submit button will allow you to submit. You can't submit an incomplete application. And the other thing is just to note, when you add in personnel, please first add organizations, or else the drop-down list doesn't populate because there's no organizations to put in it. And then it makes it kind of a mess because you have to go back and re-add all the personnel. There's a warning at the top of the page, but just note that. Other than that, I think there's a really great walkthrough of this unit.
Well, thank you so much, Judith. Thank you, Johnny. We will jump back to let's see, we're running out of time. So I think we have some poll questions in our main session. So what you could do is go back to our session here. Oh, you're seeing my back end. So let me just go back to the meeting. Okay, so here's the session where you accessed the Zoom link earlier. And if you go to polls, there are a few questions in here just to make sure that you took home some of the key pieces of information for applying for our funding. So I want to encourage you to go back to the sessions now and to, hopefully they should be easy questions for you to answer. So the first one is, how many project participants at a minimum are needed to request funding from individual annexes in a team project to be eligible for Belmont Forum funding? Next, we have, who should you first contact regarding the eligibility and requirements of a particular funding agency's annex? I'm going to actually just touch on that real quick because I'm not sure that I was very clear here, but in each annex, oh, Erica did mention this, in each annex, there is the relevant contact information for the program officer for that annex, for that funding agency, and that will be the person that you want to contact. So I'm already giving the answer away. That's okay. And then our last question here is, which statement is not a part of the Belmont Forum philosophy? I will let you go ahead and look at that. I now want to kick it over to Megan if I can, because what we're going to do is just give you a quick sneak peek as to the different upcoming funding calls that we anticipate supporting in the upcoming future and that we want you to apply for. Megan, can you help me with this one?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Also, I just put the link to the polls in the chat so that they can be easily accessible. So please fill those out for us. Okay, so we have a few CRAs that are coming up in the future. Some of them are scoping now. Some of them are going to begin scoping soon. So ones that we're scoping now are Climate, Environment, and Health 2. This one's called CEH2. And then there's also Systems of Sustainable Consumption and Production, or SSCP. And these two CRAs are both going to have scoping meetings during SRI. So once you get the SRI program, you should be able to see these. And we would love for you to join us if you'd like to see how the scoping process works and kind of what we do before a call is launched. And we also have Migration and Mobility. This one, we don't have a session at SRI, but it's currently in scoping and we're developing the call text for that one. So it will be launched probably in the fall or next spring as well. And then in the future, we're going to have a Pathways 2 call. And so this one, we haven't started scoping yet. It will likely be next year. So this one will be launched probably in 2 years-ish, so look out for that one. In addition, we have a Future Leader CRA, which there's not an icon for this, but it will be a training program. And we do have a scoping event for Future Leaders at SRI. It will be on June 14th. And this will be a really cool kind of different CRA for the Belmont Forum, and that we're trying to make a training program to train young scientists in transdisciplinarity and in sustainability so that we can really get some of these Belmont Forum themes into future scientists. Okay, so I'm going to stop that there since we're out of time and turn it back to Amanda for questions.
Yeah, so before we hit questions, we'll be able to stay on 10 minutes late if that's okay with you who are here with us today. I just want to mention to you that Today's session is being brought to you by the 2021 Sustainability Research and Innovation Congress. And this is going to be an excellent opportunity for you to come meet our networks, join our teams and our ideas, and to build your research consortium so that you are prepared to apply for these upcoming funding calls. One thing we learned from the session, the B Belmont session on Monday, is that the majority of the panelists on that session, they had pretty well established networks going into applying for this funding. So this is something that you want to start to work on now, and SRI is the perfect place to come do it. So we have scholarships, you can apply for those. Registration is not too bad. We have a 24/7 program to offer for all time zones. So we really encourage you to join us for SRI and our community as well. And so now why don't we go ahead and take some questions?
There are a few in the chat, Amanda.
Oh, excellent. Why don't you, if you want to ask those for me, Megan?
Yep, I will read one out. So one question is regarding the open data and open access principles. Is there an exception when they are applied to private companies, for example, in business sensitive information?
Erica, would you like to take that one? Sorry. Actually, we have answered that one in the chat, and thank you, Tom, for the question. Judith responded. So we do have a fair-like data management strategy. So it should be as open as possible. It is something that is reviewed as part of the panel of experts. So if something is pre-competitive or proprietary, you need to identify that in the data management plan, and just know that they'll be looking at that, considering how this project might be scaled and how the outputs, any digital tools or outcomes that you develop could be reused, because that is at the core of the transparency policy that we have. So no, it does not negate your participation, just need to explain more about it in that plan.
Megan, do we have any other questions?
Yes, we have one more. Sorry about that. I didn't scroll down far enough to see that Judith had answered it very well in the chat. So the next question is, would the proposal be considered awarded as a whole, i.e. if all eligible teams will be funded, if one funding agency, so basically they're asking if one funding agency cannot fund if their annex is not met, would the team as a whole be ineligible?
Yes. So typically what would happen is you want to make sure well ahead of the submission deadline that everyone who is in your research team and is applying for a particular annex is meeting that eligibility. Because say you have 3 project team members and one team member after submission, it is determined that they didn't actually meet the eligibility for that annex, then you're only left with 2 eligible participants, and that does not meet our minimum requirements. So in that case, it wouldn't work. But say you had a project team with 10 individuals requesting from 10 different funding agencies, and one found out that they weren't eligible after the fact, then the overall project would still be deemed eligible if there was no, if that difference did not change the overall significance of the proposal and what is being proposed. Does that answer your question? Great. Do we have any other questions? If anyone wants to turn on their video and just go ahead and ask us, please feel free to. Don't be shy. Well, is there anything anyone else would like to add from our team before we close this session?
Amanda, I just want to say it was fantastic what the team has put in front. It might take some time to digest that, and I'm sure you're looking for a call to apply this to. And as I said, we're working on that to get some new opportunities out this year. And there's lots of ways to connect with us to know when that's going to happen. We recognize that it takes a long time to pull this together. And so our open windows are usually longer than the traditional window to give you that, that time that's required. But Renuka has put some connection points as well in the chat from a proposer's perspective for you to be able to network before calls come out and start building connections if you don't already have them. And I just, you know, this is an opportunity. You have some very knowledgeable people right here to ask questions to, but understanding you might need a practical application, please do send any questions you might have to info@belmontforum.org. And we're always there to help guide you through this.
Yeah, and you know what I think I'll do right now is I want to share with you the link from the alumni panel highlight that we had on Monday. I'm going to put that in the chat now because I think we had a really interesting conversation. It was more focusing on the broad principles that need to be found within projects that Belmont Forum supports. So diving more into the transdisciplinarity, the co-production aspects, these sorts of things. We also had on that panel an expert from our panel of experts. So I think it would be really valuable for you all to watch that video and see what their experiences were like. And someone had asked if today's recording will be made available. So yes, this session, I'm just going to screen share real quick to show you what it will look like. So okay, back in our SRI session, in about 2 or 3 hours, the video will become embedded into the submission page or the session page here. We will also put it on the Belmont Forum YouTube. So if you just search YouTube on the Belmont Forum, or if you just search Belmont Forum on the YouTube website, you will be able to find today's session as well. Stop sharing. Okay, well, thank you so much. I think with that, we will call today to a close, but we so appreciate you being with us today. And we hope that you continue to engage and to consider coming to SRI and joining us for all of our different events that we will be hosting. But thank you so much, everyone. It was nice to see you all today. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.